Hey there, Poker Shark. So you've been knee-deep in notes and video breakdowns, all about mastering heads-up play. We've got your intel right here, ready to extract the juicy bits of wisdom. Ever feel like you're facing a puzzle wrapped in an enigma when you go head-to-head? We're about to crack that code.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Heads-up poker is a whole different beast than a full-table game. It's a psychological battle
Mm.
where reading your opponent and adapting your strategy on the fly is crucial.
You're telling me, in one of your recent hands, you
Uh,
faced an opponent who made it to heads up despite playing, shall we
mm.
say, a little wildly. You noted that they got lucky several times leading up to that final showdown. It makes you wonder how much of poker is riding that wave of good fortune and how much is pure skill.
That's the question that haunts every poker player, right? We can analyze the hands all day long, but sometimes the cards just fall a certain way. This opponent of yours definitely benefited from some fortunate turns, but that's where the concept of variance comes in. Even the worst players can get lucky streaks. The key is recognizing that luck is a short-term factor. Over time, skill will always prevail.
That makes sense. But it can be frustrating when you're on the receiving end of those lucky streaks. So how do we as players navigate that tension between skill and variance? Do we just wait for the perfect hand and hope for the best?
I'd say it's more about understanding that variance is a part of the game and not letting it derail your decision-making. A skilled player focuses on making the best decisions possible with the information available, regardless of short-term outcomes. Think of it this way. You're building a solid foundation for long-term success, brick by brick. Even if a few bricks get knocked loose by a gust of bad luck now and then.
I like that analogy. It's about focusing on the process, not just the immediate results. Speaking of adapting, you also mentioned facing some seriously wild opponents in your notes.
Right.
You know, the type who seems to be shoving all their chips in every other hand. How do you even begin to strategize against that kind of unpredictable aggression?
It can be intimidating for sure, but the video breakdown you shared offers a surprising approach.
Yeah.
Sometimes the best strategy against a loose aggressive player is to play cautiously. It might seem counterintuitive, but hear me out.
I'm all ears. I've always felt the pressure to match that aggression, to fight fire with fire, but is that always the best approach?
Not necessarily. Think of it this way. If someone's constantly going all in, they're making themselves incredibly vulnerable. They're likely overplaying weak hands and making mistakes. By playing a tighter, more controlled game, you're essentially letting them hang themselves. You're waiting for those prime opportunities where you have a strong hand and can capitalize on their inevitable blunders.
Okay, so we're playing the long game, waiting for the right moment to pounce. I can see how that could be incredibly effective, especially against someone who's playing more on instinct than strategy. Now, you've also been exploring a move that always raises an eyebrow at the table, limping in heads-up play. I'll admit, I used to think limping was a rookie move, a sign of weakness, but your research suggests it can actually be a strategic weapon.
You're right. Limping, especially heads up, can seem passive, but against the right opponent, it can be a brilliant way to set a trap. Imagine you've noticed your opponent folds to raises 80% of the time after they limp. This is a prime spot to limp in with a wider range of hands. You're inducing a fold and winning the pot pre-flop, all by appearing weak.
Whoa, so you're saying limping can be a way to exploit an opponent's aggression. It's like we're setting a mousetrap and using timidity as the cheese. I love it.
Exactly. But it all comes down to observation. You need to study your opponent's tendencies. If they consistently raise after you limp, it's probably not a good strategy. But if they tend to check or call too often, you might be able to exploit that with a well-timed limp. You're gathering data with every hand, figuring out their puzzle.
That's fascinating. It's not just about the cards in our hand. It's about understanding the person sitting across from us, almost like building a psychological profile.
Absolutely. And that's what separates good players from great players. The ability to not only play the cards, but also play the player.
Okay, so we've talked about adapting our strategy to an opponent's tendencies, but what about those moments when the pressure is really on, heads up for the win, the stakes are high, does everyone just clam up and play super tight?
That's a great question. And it's where the psychology of poker gets really interesting. You'd think the pressure would make people more cautious, right? But sometimes it's the opposite. The source material mentions that even the most reckless player you faced started making slightly tighter decisions in the final stages, almost like they realized they actually had something to lose now.
So their risk tolerance shifted. It wasn't just about blind aggression anymore.
Exactly. The dynamics of the game change when it's down to the wire. Players become more aware of the potential consequences. So how do you adjust to that? It's a delicate balance between recognizing the shift in their approach and overthinking things. You don't want to get caught in analysis paralysis, but you also don't want to miss the subtle cues that your opponent is giving you.
It's almost like trying to decipher a secret code that's constantly changing. How do we develop that kind of intuition, that ability to read the shifts in momentum and adjust our strategy accordingly?
I think it starts with observation, as we've discussed. Every hand, every bet, every reaction is a piece of the puzzle. But it's also about developing a sense of empathy for your opponent. Try to understand what they're thinking, what their motivations might be. Are they playing out of fear? Are they desperate to win? The more you can get inside their head, the better you'll be able to anticipate their moves.
That's such an interesting concept. It's not just about the cards. It's about connecting with the person on the other side of the table, understanding their emotions, and how those emotions are driving their decisions. It's almost like a game of chess, where you're trying to anticipate your opponent's next move based on their personality and their current state of mind.
Exactly. And just like in chess, every move you make has consequences. It's about calculating risks, weighing potential rewards against potential losses. Sometimes the best move is to fold, even if it feels counterintuitive. Other times, it's about making a bold bluff, pushing your opponent to the brink, and seeing how they react.
That's where the real art of poker comes in, right? It's not just about following a set of rules or strategies. It's about using your intuition, your creativity, and your understanding of human psychology to navigate those complex, high-pressure situations.
I couldn't have said it better myself. But we can't forget about our own mental game in all of this. How do we as players stay focused and avoid tilting under pressure? Because let's be honest, those bad beats can really sting.
Yeah.
Especially when it's down to the wire. One wrong move and it's all over.
It's true. And that's where emotional resilience becomes just as important as strategic thinking, right?
Absolutely. You have to be able to acknowledge those negative emotions, the frustration, the disappointment, but not let them dictate your decisions. It's about maintaining composure. Even when you're feeling the heat, think of it as having a poker face for your own inner turmoil.
I love that. So what are some practical tips for keeping our cool when the pressure's mounting? How do we cultivate that inner Zen master at the poker table?
One of the simplest yet most effective techniques is taking breaks. Step away from the table, clear your head, and come back refreshed. It's amazing how a few minutes of detachment can help you regain perspective and avoid making impulsive decisions.
That makes perfect sense. It's easy to get tunnel vision when you're in the zone, hyper-focused on every bet and every card. Stepping back allows you to see the bigger picture. Are there other techniques we can use to manage our mental state during those intense heads-up battles?
Mindfulness practices, like deep breathing or meditation, can be incredibly helpful. Even a few moments of focused breathing can help you calm your nerves and regain control of your emotions. It's about bringing a sense of awareness to the present moment, rather than getting swept away by the what-ifs and the should-have-dones.
That's so true. It's about being present in the moment, rather than letting our thoughts spiral out of control. It's almost like a form of mental self-defense, protecting ourselves from the onslaught of doubts and anxieties that can creep in during those crucial moments.
Exactly. It's about cultivating that inner strength, that mental resilience that allows you to stay focused and make clear strategic decisions, even when the stakes are high and the pressure's on. And speaking of high-pressure moves, there's one aspect of heads-up play that we haven't touched on yet, but it's arguably the most thrilling and the most intimidating: the art of the bluff.
So that's what I'm talking about. The bluff, it's the stuff of poker legends, the ultimate display of cunning and deception. It's the move that can turn the tide of an entire game, but it can also backfire spectacularly if you're not careful.
You've got it. The bluff is a high-risk, high-reward maneuver that separates the amateurs from the masters. It's about convincing your opponent that you have a stronger hand than you actually do, and it requires a deep understanding of psychology, timing, and calculated risk-taking.
All right. I'm ready to dive into the world of bluffing. Let's unravel the secrets of this legendary poker move and learn how to wield it effectively in those crucial heads-up showdowns. All right, let's talk bluffing. It's the move that can make you feel like a poker superhero, but it can also lead to some epic fails. How do we walk that tightrope?
You hit the nail on the head. Bluffing is a balancing act. It's about choosing the right moments, the right opponents, and projecting the right image. Remember what we discussed earlier about table image? It's crucial when it comes to bluffing.
Right. Table image is basically how our opponent perceives our playing style based on our past actions. So if we've been playing conservatively, only betting strong hands, our opponent is more likely to believe a sudden aggressive move is genuine.
Exactly. You've built a reputation for being a tight, player.
Mm-hmm.
So when you suddenly fire off a big bet,
Mm-hmm.
your opponent might assume you have the goods. They might even fold a decent hand out of fear,
Mm.
giving you the pot with, essentially, air.
Okay, that makes sense. But wouldn't we become predictable if we only bluffed when we had a tight table image?
That's where the art of mixing things up comes in. You don't want to be too transparent. If your opponent can always predict your moves, you become easy to exploit. A good poker player knows how to balance their play, throwing in bluffs strategically to keep their opponent guessing.
So it's about creating an element of unpredictability, keeping our opponent on their toes. They never quite know what we're holding or what our intentions are.
Precisely. It's about creating doubt in their minds, making them second-guess their reads. But remember, bluffing is always a calculated risk. You need to weigh the potential rewards against the potential consequences.
Meaning we need to be prepared to lose the pot if our bluff gets called.
Exactly. That's why position is so important when bluffing. If you're the last to act, you have more information about your opponent's likely hand strength. You can see how they've bet, how they've reacted, and use that information to make a more informed decision about whether or not to bluff.
So it's not just about putting on a poker face and hoping for the best. There's a lot of strategic thinking involved. Analyzing the situation, reading our opponent, and deciding whether a bluff is worth the risk.
What about those high-pressure moments when we're facing an all-in bet? Is bluffing ever a viable option in those scenarios?
That's when the stakes are highest, both literally and figuratively. Bluffing with an all-in bet is incredibly risky. But there are certain circumstances where it might be the right move. Let's say you've been representing a very strong hand throughout the hand, consistently betting and raising. Your opponent, sensing weakness, suddenly shoves all in. If you have a strong read on your opponent, and you believe they're overplaying a weak hand, you might consider calling their bluff with a reshove of your own.
Wow, that's a bold move. It's like a high-stakes poker showdown, a battle of nerves and wits. What are the key factors we should consider before making that kind of daring play? First and foremost, you need to be extremely confident in your read of your opponent. You have to believe they're bluffing. And you have to be willing to risk your entire stack on that belief. It's also crucial to consider your table image. If you've been bluffing frequently throughout the game, your opponent might be more likely to call your all-in bluff. But if you've been playing a solid, consistent game, they might give you more credit and fold their hand.
So it's a delicate balance between reading our opponent, understanding our table image, and having the courage to make that high-risk, high-reward play.
Exactly. But remember, bluffing, especially with an all-in bet, should be used sparingly. It's a weapon in your arsenal, not a strategy to rely on in every situation. The most successful poker players know when to bluff, when to fold, and when to simply play the strength of their hand.
It sounds like mastering the art of bluffing is a journey, not a destination. It's about constantly refining our skills, learning from our mistakes, and developing that intuitive sense of when and how to deploy this powerful weapon.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's about understanding the nuances of the game, the psychology of your opponent, and ultimately, trusting your gut.
Well, I feel like we've covered a tremendous amount of ground in this deep dive into heads-up poker strategy. From analyzing luck versus skill, to adapting to wild opponents, mastering the mental game, and wielding the art of the bluff. It's clear that heads-up poker is a multifaceted challenge that requires a blend of skill, strategy,
and psychological warfare.
Absolutely. And I think the key takeaway for our listeners is this. Heads-up poker is a game of constant adaptation and evolution. It's about learning from every hand, every opponent, and every mistake. It's about honing your skills, expanding your knowledge, and developing that intuitive sense of what it takes to win.
So to our poker enthusiasts out there, keep those cards sharp, keep studying those hands, keep analyzing those strategies, and never stop learning. Every time you sit down at the table, whether it's online or in a live game, it's an opportunity to test your skills, push your boundaries, and become a better player. And who knows, maybe one day you'll find yourself going head-to-head with a world champion, bluffing your way to victory, and cementing your place in poker history.
Until next time, may the flop be with you and the river be kind.
See you in the next deep dive.
For you.
Good. My poker results are great. Well, great. I mean, better than usual. I'm happy with this. I hope it keeps on. I keep the trajectory, and I will then be able to move up to level 2. But the last game I had was interesting because I was playing against a big fish who was extremely lucky. He did a lot of things wrong. He really didn't play well. He was playing heads up, so he still managed to make it for playing for the first or second place. And he was facing me. And I started heads up with a little more big blinds than him, but he got lucky again. And then he had more big blinds than I had, and I still made it. But he was very loose during the entire game. He made a lot of all in, even with the 70 big blinds. He made like 2 or 3 all ins. So he was really crazy. But he was also very lucky, and he made it to heads up. So I had to fold a lot, really a lot, until I was third. Then I could take a little more risk. But before that, I didn't want to get out of the tournament just because the big fish is lucky. So I didn't want to gamble my tournament life in a heads up 70, 30 or 20 big blinds. So I folded a lot until I made it into the bubble. So it was an interesting tournament because we played totally different. I was very prudent and he was extremely aggressive. And we ended up at the same space. We ended up in a heads up. Poker is the kind of game where you can do everything wrong and still have great results. Short term, yeah.
Do you think he would often get heads up with the way he played?
No, I think he was very lucky during this tournament. Because normally with the mistakes, he should have 8, 7 or 6 place, but he should not have made it to a heads up. But it was his day. He was extremely lucky. So he was even against me in the heads up. I entered the heads up with a little more big blinds than him, but he did get lucky again against me. And then he had more big blinds. But his luck was not enough to make him win the tournament.
Did you also practice the stuff we talked about last time, which is limping more in heads up?
Yeah. So I thought it would be very difficult to do that, but it is not. So I did it. And for now, I think it goes great. So I'm happy with it. I think it's a little better. And I will win a little more heads up doing that. So it is. So you can risk 0.5 big blind. It doesn't really change a lot your chances of making it. Even if you have to fold on the flop, turn or river, it's still okay. You can risk 0.5 big blinds. And as you said, a lot of times I will get lucky, even with very bad hands.
Did you also continuation bet the flop? Or did you mostly check it down if you miss?
I mostly check it, yeah.
But even then
Again,
it's good, right? So
yeah, even then it was great. But against the big blind, I also limped one hand, only one. The other I didn't have to limp. But this one I did limp, and we checked on the turn, and then came the river. And on the river, I made a pair, but it was a low pair. So it was bottom pair or close to bottom pair. So really wasn't a good hand. But I looked at the other guy, and I knew because he already checked. So I knew he's very, very aggressive. And he checked all the way wrong, all the way, even the river he checked. So he probably had nothing. Because if he would have made anything, even bottom pair, he would have gone all in, as I know him. So I thought my bottom pair was good enough, and I did bet it. But he did then fold. He was a little prudent, even though the rest of the time he was extremely aggressive. When you're playing for first place, you change your behavior a little. And the big fish also did a little change his behavior. But anyways, I did my psychological reading on him was correct, and he folded. So, but even if he didn't fold, I would have won the hand, so it wouldn't have changed anything. I just thought he's a big fish. He would call, So I thought, let's see if I can get 2 more big blinds out of him or something like that. Anyways, it was interesting.
Yes. And I would say, just to add on this limping talk from lesson, I guess I'll pose it as a question to you. What's the ideal opponent behavior for this limping to be especially effective in heads up?
I think it's better if he's tight than if he's loose. So if he's tight when he plays heads up, it would be in my favor.
Yes, I agree. So if someone really likes going all in, then it's a bit of a problem, right? If you limp and they go all in all the time. But ideally, I would say it's an opponent who is loose in a way that they're not aggressive. So what I mean by that is someone...
But I agree with what you say, Norman. But if he calls and he's aggressive, and he will bluff the flop, bluff the turn, and I just let him do the bluffing. And in the end, I'll take a lot of big blinds from him. So if he's aggressive and he bluffs with everything, well, 1 out of 3 times, I don't know exactly the probability, but a lot. I thought you showed me 30% probability chance of me making something. So 30% of the time, he will lose a lot if he's very aggressive and bluffing a lot.
Yes, I agree. But going back to the of a loose passive player is that they won't, if they're passive, they're less likely to raise your limp or go all in. That would be a big benefit. And by loose, I mean, sometimes you have an opponent who, if you make it your 2 or 3 big blinds, they will call. But if you limp in, then they won't raise. So I would say that's the ideal opponent who, would call your raise. So if you don't have a great hand, you don't want to play a big pot, but if they call your raise, that could be a problem. But if you can now limp in and they don't raise there, then that would be preferred to raising and knowing that they call, right? So raising this player fold a bunch, but if someone doesn't fold a bunch, then limping starts to be better.
Yeah, but how can I use it to my advantage? I mean, it won't change my playing style. And my opponent, well, he is what he is. So it's very hard to say. Unless you know him very well and played a lot of games with him, it's very hard to say. When you face him the first time, the big fish I faced today was the first time I saw him. So I couldn't know how he would play heads up before I played at least with him once. The heads-up game. Now, I knew that he would be loose and he would be capable of doing an all-in with 4-8 offsuit. I know that he's capable of doing that, but still, the question you ask and the way he will play, that's very hard to say, because even if you played already an entire game with him, he might change again when he's playing for first place because there's more pressure. So psychologically, it will be hard for him to do the same thing he did until now, because now he's playing for some money. Before that, he was just joking around. He was just having some fun.
So first hand of heads up, you're right, it's tough to know. But if you already played 5 to 10 hands heads up, you can notice, have they already gone all in a few times? Have they raised all the buttons they've had? Or have they folded about half of their 5 or 6 buttons they've had? Have they raised your limps so far? So if you play 5, 10 hands, you could already start to see some patterns sometimes. But yeah, the first hand of heads up, it's tough to know what someone would do.
Yeah, I admit that you can find out a lot about people, but I'm not sure that it is so detailed as you seem to put it. So I think it's general stuff. Like you might think now he might be on tilt, now he might be scared. You might some intuition on how he would play, but I think it's very hard to look too much into it. It's like reading the future by looking at the intestines of a pig or a chicken. I think you might be right from time to time if you're a good oracle, but the rest of the time it might go very, very bad.
No, I don't mean predicting like that, but I mean, let's say you play one hand heads up and you raised, they called, and the hand goes to showdown, and you see they had 5-3 offsuit. So by that, you would already know, okay, whenever I raise, this guy never folds, right? Just takes one hand, and already, if they called with 5-3 off, most likely they're going to call any hand, right? So that's an example how one hand can already give you a lot of info.
But now you are taking an extreme case. And look, I had an extreme player, the big fish I was talking about. He was extreme and he still folded sometimes. And he still didn't call all my all-ins. Some he did with bad hands, but some he also folded. So it's very hard to see. When I had good hands, I thought, now call my all-in, as you usually do. Well, he folded. It's not as easy. I mean, you adapt your play against a player, and that's a good thing if you know stuff about him. but it's not that easy.
I'm not saying about absolutes, right? It's just, I mean, it's sometimes, yes, sometimes there's nothing to notice. Everything's normal. And then you can assume the other player plays quite well. But even it could be a little thing, right? You go all in 10 big blinds and you have queen 4. Should they call your 10 big blind all in with queen 4?
If I have less than 6.2 big blinds, yes, they should.
I didn't ask that. What did I ask?
You ask if with queen 4 off, they should call my all in a heads
Well,
up.
Yes. But there was a story before it, right? The story was you go all in for 10, they call, you see them having queen 4.
Okay, if I have 10, no, then they should fold, yeah. I didn't hear that, sorry. It didn't, my brain didn't register.
Right. So
It didn't enter my brain.
let's say this happens, but heads up is not over. Somehow with a pot, there will still be chips left. Could you assume something based on a hand like this? Could you assume they're going to call all the time your heads up shoves?
I could assume that there's a high probability that they will call, yeah. But not that they could. So what should I say?
Right. So not black and white, but somewhere in between the two, right? So will they call 3-2 off if you go all in next time? Probably not. But it does imply something if they called their queen 4 off. Does it imply they're calling looser than they should or tighter than they should?
Looser than they should.
It's implying that they're calling looser than they should. So most likely, if they have another hand that is similar to queen 4 off, that really shouldn't call 10 big blinds, but should call 6 or 7 big blinds and below, it's quite likely they'll do a similar play they did with queen 4 off. So just this one hand they called with queen 4 off. Next time you're pushing something all in, maybe you want to be a little more careful now, knowing that, especially if you're pushing something weak, that they won't fold very often, right? Let's say
So what do you to limp more with such a player?
Let's say you have another hand after this and you still have 10 big blinds and you have 10-4 suited, okay? What could you do with 10-4 suited for 10 big blinds?
I think I can do an all-in.
Yes, in normal circumstances, you could do an all-in, but is it now are you really happy if your all-in gets called if you have 10-4 suited?
No, I'm not happy.
Right, you're not happy. So maybe against a player who just called with queen 4 off where he shouldn't, now you're just gonna limp with your 10-4 or raise or try something different. That's my whole point. So it's not like I'm doing everything completely different, but I'm tightening up a little bit now.
Yeah, I get the idea. But, even though he was loose and even though he was exactly the player who would call an all-in with queen 4 offsuit, I'm not sure actually that he did that, but he was a big fish, He also, my all-ins, I made all-ins normally, according to the pusher chart. And a lot of them, he did fold my all-ins. So he still did give me some respect for my all-ins. Not all the time, but from time to time, he gave me some respect with my all-ins.
Sure, and I would still go all in against him. My whole point is I would be a little more cautious if I thought he's a little too loose.
Yeah, but most of my players are a little too loose. Not all of them. They are also tight players. But a lot are a little too loose.
More cautious as a default. Then as a default, I would be maybe in the chart, I would shove if it says 10, I would shove 12. If it says 8, I would shove 10. If it says 6, I would shove it. So if everyone's a bit too loose, then I would as a default be more cautious against it.
Okay, I understand that. Thank you. You wanted to talk about the pusher and caller chart, and you wanted to explain that the numbers are not exactly as I thought they are. That I think you wanted to tell me that I could even call a little looser. When it says 5.4, I think you wanted to tell me that I could even call maybe with 6 or something like this.
Yes, exactly. So Yes, these charts are with the numbers before blinds and antes, exactly. So, well, the blind, if you're a big blind, the blind is half a big blind. And if the other guy shoves, in their amount, it will show the small blind in it, right? So if someone shoves, I think everything's, well, yes, still, then you can still look at there. But yeah, I mean, basically you get the correct overview of this, yes. That these are the numbers before the blinds. So
Is that all you wanted to point out? Because you did write me a message.
yeah, I think on these charts, I think you're quite familiar with this, right? I'll just remind you that you should use the anti charts because you do play in tournaments with an anti.
Is that all your message was about? I mean, it might be the case. It just you did write a message and ask me to look at it, and I did. I tried to understand it, but I didn't understand it 100%. I think you did, and I think you did not talk just about the end. You talked about something else, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I'm reading that message right now and to me, it's only about the end.
Oh, it's only about the antes. Okay, then
Well,
it's
antis and the blinds, antis and the blind, right? So if you see someone in the big blind and there's 4.5 in front of them, then actually in the chart, you should take 4.5 plus 1 and plus 0.15. So actually, this is a little bit of extra math work for you there. Unless you want to rewrite the charts and remove the one big blind and the ante from the whole chart. Yeah.
I like it if I'm a little more tight. You also said, we also agreed that most of my players are loose. So for me, being a little more tight is fine at the level I'm playing right now. Now in the future, if I go higher and I realize that people change their behavior and are much more tight, then we can bring the subject up again and change the chart, because you also showed me a chart with the antes. So I already have a chart that is looser. So I can just switch to that chart.
You're right to basically what you said, that if you come across someone who's too tight, then you could even go wider than the chart. So both ways are true. If your opponent's too loose calling, you should tighten up a bit. But if you come across someone who even in heads up only goes all in like ace 10 or better, then you could shove pretty much everything really, because they would be folding too much. Now, you don't often know that, right? So take me, like all these things I say, sometimes you notice it, but maybe it's 1 in 5 heads up where someone has like an obvious mistake they do. All the other ones, yes, you would just try to play your normal game there. But if it is one of those 1 in 5 special heads up matches, then it's good to know, right? That if they're very tight, you can shove way more than the chart. And if they're very loose, you should tighten up and shove less than the chart, this sort of thing.
Yeah, I agree. But what we are doing is we are abusing the other player. By abusing, I mean we are exploiting him. And wait. It is like, in school or somewhere else, I'm sure you already saw a couple of bullies, and they always pick out a guy who normally won't fight back. They rarely choose the alpha male. They always choose somebody where they think, okay, they can just go with it and have a laugh out of it. They won't do it if the guy might fight back and if it might get dangerous for them. So just as the bully exploits the way certain people are, that you can trample on them, we do the same on the poker player. You realize that he has a defect, something that is a little off, and then we try to exploit it.
Yes, you can call it exploiting, and it most often is called exploitative poker, but I would call it personally teaching. So if you notice something's off about someone, what's the quickest way of teaching it? Well, one would be you say that, but another way of teaching on the table is you just exploit it, and then that will bring their attention to it, right? That will probably, even if you never talk to that guy, at some point he'll start to think about, there was something with this heads up match. The other guy was going all in every hand. I had to fold all the time. And then when I finally called with my ace 10, he had 6-7 suited and 40% to win. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. So I really like to think of it as this is the most direct way of pointing out to the other player other than saying it. But I guess it's even like there's a saying like proof is in the pudding. So maybe for the other player, you're too tight heads up, but he would say, "Yeah, I don't believe you. I think I play heads up well." But then if you prove it to him basically on the table that he loses because of, it's the kind of stuff like with my teaching, right? I teach you something. At first you're maybe hesitant or whatever the thing, but when do you really learn is if you try it out and see, okay, now I'm doing better on the table. Must have worked. So that's my view of it. And I guess with bullies, sometimes it's a little more like bad or ugly. So, but I think even there's something good about bullying, right? If someone's like very nerdy and they get bullied for that, well, it's basically the other kids telling them that you're different and we're a social species and we share interests and so on. So it's like, I think it's a way of communication. And me personally, I'm always very happy if my friends make fun of me. I also try to make fun of myself because I think a lot of growth is in it. I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, well, bullying is different than making a joke and so on. And I agree with this. But on a poker table, it's fair game, right? Anyone can play any strategy they want. The other player signed up to play this tournament. And if you want, you could do anything that's allowed in the rule set, right? So you could go every hand 5 big blinds. It's up to them to react to that. You could go all in every hand. It's up to them to react to them. So if you now do some special strategy for them, to me, that's even, well, that's an expected thing in a way, right? I think any sport or competition is like that. And if I think it's the quickest way to learn. Like if you played and someone did something special against you and it was very effective, wouldn't it lead your thoughts into, hey, maybe that's smart what he's doing. Maybe I should defend better in this spot. Maybe I should learn from this. So I actually see as a positive, this exploitative way of playing.
Yeah, I'm not against what you say, but my explanation is a little different. No, I think people do stuff for a reason. Now, that reason might not be logical because they don't want to learn anything about logic or reason. Very few people want to learn that. No, we did an exercise about logic and I found it interesting. Very hard, but interesting. No, since even ChatGPT did get it wrong. But now there are new models, maybe they get it right now. Anyways, the thing is, most people don't want to learn that kind of stuff. So they want just to have fun and do stupid things. I've published a video talking about the founder of the guy from Jackass. And he made a huge fortune because his thing Jackass, where he puts himself into pain, was very popular. So there were a couple of TV shows, of movies made, and at the peak of his glory, he had 45 millions. And he managed to lose it all in 4 or 5 years. His 45 million shrunk to 1 million. Now he has around 1 million left. And it's not just bad luck. It is stupid decision he did. I mean, I know it's very hard for him because he's like a surfer. He catched a wave and that made him a lot of money. He became a celebrity. But, there's a moment you have to start thinking. You cannot just make stupid stuff your entire life. And I'm sorry. I know that it's very hard to talk with somebody who knows something about the market or anything else or about life, about women, about anything. His wife divorced him and she asked for a lot of money during the divorce. And then she wanted an allowance every month for the one kid she put on in the world for more than 100K. 100 or 150K she wanted, or maybe 115K. Every month she wanted. I mean, I get it. You're the mother of one child, but please, I mean, 115K a month, that's still a lot. And if you put yourself in that kind of situation, that probably wasn't even the stupidest thing he did. If you put yourself in those kind of situations again and again, well, then you're capable of stupidly losing 44 millions in 4 or 5 years maximum, So and why did he do it? I think he had to understand that just doing stupid thing might not be enough, So maybe the lesson, even that Fortune taught him, he didn't register the lesson. Maybe the words just passed his ears and he didn't pay any attention to it. But people do stuff for a reason. And when I play with somebody and I make some money with it, well, that money probably is nothing for him. And if it's a lot, then he might start thinking about his life and the way he treats money and the risk he takes, So the only way for him to grow is through experience. And yes, it helps a lot to have somebody with who you can talk, like you, or somebody who knows something about the markets. All those things help to talk to a philosopher and so on. All those things help. But in the end, it's your life, So if you want to do stupid things, like the guy from Jackass, well, then you do stupid things, but you will pay the price. There will be a moment where you pay the price for all the nonsense you did. I cannot change the rule of the game. All I can do is be nice. And if people want to listen and to learn, then I can teach them. But until they come to me and ask for it, there's nothing I can do. If I tell on the street people what they should do, it doesn't work. I mean, philosophers tried that. The cynic tried that. It does not work. Socrates did it. Okay? They condemned him to death in exchange for all the work he did for free. They condemned him to death. He was a great philosopher, but he did all his work for free, and people weren't grateful for it. Most of them, maybe some exception he saw during his life, but most weren't grateful. So just telling people what they don't want to hear is not a solution. So the only way for them to grow is to start working on themselves. And the most important thing is to work on your soul. And then if you want to have a hobby like poker or something else, then you can do that also and try to get better. But it will take work, So until you start working, you cannot expect good results. I'm very patient with my progress in poker. And that's the only way I can be a decent poker player one day. Because it isn't easy for me at my age to learn poker.
Yeah, I don't disagree with what you said. I think in the same lanes, and we cannot control what other people do. I think it's very true also on the poker table. I do think the nicest way to be on a poker game is to play your hardest and your best. So I think it's disrespectful if someone's playing bad and now you also start to play bad or don't take advantage of their mistakes. Like if you play basketball and you're bad at bouncing the ball and dribbling, if the other player can do it and can take the ball away when you're bouncing it, then they should do it because it's the right thing to do in the game. And that's also the quickest way for you to learn that, hey, I need to get better at bouncing the ball. But if the other people just ignore it and they're like, well, he's not good at it, let's let him do that mistake and so on, then you would never discover that you actually have an issue with that. So that was my whole point with poker as well, that if someone folds too much to all ins, well, then you teach them by going all in very often, and then maybe they will understand, maybe not. That's up to them. But at least from your part, you're taking the best course of action there. And if someone's very loose and likes to gamble, then you show him that, well, I can be patient. I can fold 5 or 10 hands in a row. And if you have your queen 4, I have pocket tens, and now you're in a lot of trouble. So something like that was my point. I think bullying is like a very strong word. I think that's when it's overdone, right? When you're really starting to hurt the other person and trying to like destroy them. If it's done in a friendly way in a game, to point out someone's this or that. So yeah, I'm not sure how to respond to what you said. I guess I agree in the most part that people can do all sorts of stuff, and some of them learn and some of them don't like to learn. And I think it's true that the older you are, the more difficult it is to be flexible and open to new ideas or open to being wrong and all these things. So in this way, always, if I have older poker students, they very much inspire me. And I hope that when I'm their age, I'm also as open to improving myself still and doing new stuff. For example, my grandpa was still doing pull-ups on a bar in the morning when he was 70 years old, I think. So I don't know, but if I'm 70 and I can do something similar, I would be very happy with that. So yes, it's, I think, very good for your health, for your mental health, for your youth, all this, that you youthfulness, that you're still open to learning. And I've seen a lot of that with this lesson, right? I think if we could think back to one of your first lessons and so on, I think there's been many differences. So that's at least how I see it.
Yeah, but there's one thing when we look at life and we talk about kids who get bullied, and where that's a period where you're searching for what you will do with your life. And what I really didn't like, there's a lot I didn't like about our school system, the indoctrination we go through, the brainwashing we go through. But what I really don't like is that people don't talk sincerely to you. So for example, let's say you're lucky enough to take piano lessons. So the guy will start teaching you the basic on how to play piano, but he never talks about your future as a pianist and what it would take to be a professional pianist player. And if you could make it and what you will have to do to make it, but even if you do, you won't get a good answer because they don't actually know that. Most of them don't know. It's like if I ask you, tell me what I have to do to become a profitable poker player. You who can make a living by playing poker. It will be very hard for you to answer that question. And it's the same with other people. So the only thing I want to say, I'm not saying I really appreciate our lessons. They're the best lesson I had in my entire life. So that has nothing to do with criticizing. But the thing is, when you search for meaning and when you search your place in the world, and you have all those people around you who only try to do the less effort possible just to get a paycheck and put some food on the table. That's all they're interested in, That's very depressing. And you don't actually want to learn anything for them. Because if you do, what will you do with the rest of your life? In the best case, you are like them, but that's not really something you can aspire to. You want to aspire to. It's nothing noble or heroic. It's just, it's just a guy who did find a solution to put some food on his table, which is all right, but it's just not enough, When you take decision that will have an impact on your entire life, and nobody talks sincerely to you. And that's something I don't like. So I think people should be capable of explaining what it is, the essence, and what makes you a good pianist and what does not. And the price you will have to pay if you want to become a good pianist. Now, also, he can add that it's not necessary that you become one of those great pianists. You can also just play as an amateur for your pleasure, because you admire the great composers, because you like the instrument, because you like music. You can also do it just, and I want to say for fun, but just as a hobby. If you want to become one of the best, they should be capable of telling you what the sacrifice you will have to do for how long so that you become one of them. It's just the people I talk to, it's so frustrating because they never talk sincerely to you. What I mean when I say sincerely, they should know stuff about how to become one of the best pianists of the world. They should know that kind of stuff. So I think that's important, because when you're looking for your future and to find your place in life, you should have people who are sincere to you and who guide you and allow you to make a choice, and not just bullies who want to have fun and kick somebody around. That's not enough. If you're facing just those kind of people, what will happen? I mean, what will you do with your life? It's very hard. I know. I mean, even bullying has something good because it makes you stoic. It makes you stronger. So if you're the victim of bullying, is actually that there are some good elements into it. You wouldn't think so, but there are. But still, the thing is, when you're a teacher and you try to, as a teacher, I try to help. And when you try to help, you should be sincere.
So I think that's a good thing with bullying. They're truthful and sincere, right? If someone's fat, they tell them, you're fat. They don't sugarcoat it. They just bully him. Hey, fatty, come here, fatty. If someone's short, then they bully them for that. If someone is poor, they bully them for that. So I think that's a great thing in a way, right? I mean, if people are more honest, then they should be like just saying to each other what they think, and then that's it.
Okay, let's admit that they are honest. I don't think it's the case because sometimes they make stuff up that isn't truthful. So they're not always honest. They just want to hurt. And every mean of hurting is great. If it's the truth, the truth hurts. But sometimes I saw it. They make stuff up. So the thing is, yes, but a bully he doesn't really want to help you. As a teacher, it is different because you're not supposed to be a bully. You're supposed to help people. At least that's how I see teaching. Teaching for me is helping people. In that case, you should be capable of being sincere. And I didn't see that in my teachers, most of them. I'm not talking about you, Norman. You must understand, I'm talking about my childhood right now, not about you. You're the exception. But yeah, the thing is just when you try to help you should be capable of doing more than just explaining to me what Pythagoras did and what is. So there's more to it than just being capable of solving an equation. I mean, that it's not that it's totally stupid to do that, but it's just not just that, You should teach much more than that, and you should be sincere to people. But then again, the thing is, with our school system, we don't have it's not a direct relationship between you and the teacher. There's the whole class around it, and they don't want to take time for every individual student and talk with them about their life and their future. They don't want to do that. They just want to give the lesson and then move on with the life. They're not really concerned, the students, individually.
I think a lot of teachers want well, but they want to be truthful in a sensitive and kind way, right? They want to be, it's difficult to find this balance that you're strict, you say things as they are and straight, but also say it in a way that thinks about the other people's feelings, right? So just as bullies, even if they say the truthful things sometimes, they don't say it in a nice or a friendly way, right? But teachers sometimes possibly try too much to be nice, and then they hold back in saying these difficult things because they don't want to offend, right? And sometimes it's easy to worry about that. Like if a student doesn't do a homework and teacher wants to say, you're lazy, you don't try enough. It's difficult to say it so that it wouldn't come across as being judgmental, that it wouldn't come across as being mean or too strict. Like maybe the student is like, no, it's not so important. You're being too harsh, too strict. I don't like you. So I think that's the difficulty, that I think most teachers are like friendly, calm, nice people. And it's often not so easy to say something that possibly could get a reaction, right? Even if I say like, yeah, last time, like I say, well, try limping in the small blind more, or if there's been some hands we reviewed and I'm like, yeah, I think it's, it's the bubble here. You shouldn't have called this all in. It's not easy to take these things, and it's also not easy to say these things in a way that comes out in a caring and well, that it's perceived in a good way, right? If you imagine someone being overweight, it's difficult how to say it to a person because it's probably, they're deeply emotional about it. So if you just, even if you said like, don't take that extra cake, they could start crying and be like, why did you make me feel so bad about how I am and things like that. So I'm just trying to say that it's tricky sometimes to say these things in a like in a sensitive, caring way. And I have my own theory on how to get like good at something. And my theory is people don't choose their job chooses them. So what I mean by that is I think the best way is for someone to try out all sorts of different things. And then if you try out all sorts of different things, you'll just see what you want to do more, what happens like more naturally, comes better for you and things like that. So I think that's the key to, it's very tough I don't think I could be like a very good in anything which I'm not interested or talented for in some way. I think it has to happen like in a natural way. Even if I think about these poker lessons, I remember in high school where I had a classmate and math test was coming up and we were looking at textbooks and I was explaining him some stuff there and we were like, I was helping him with those math things and it just like naturally kind of goes together that I've always liked to like give advice to people and help them and stuff like that. So I think that's the thing. Like if someone's great in playing piano, maybe they didn't do something special. It's just that they had the piano at home. Well, that could help a lot, but maybe they just started doing it and it just sort of happened. Like they just did it many years and then they like doing it. And then if you do something long time, many years and like doing it, then it doesn't also feel like you have to put in hours, right? So when I started poker, at first I did school and stuff like that, but there was many days where I just played 10 hours, 14 hours straight, like sometimes even more. I don't remember exactly, but I was just all the time playing. Every free time I was watching like poker TV shows, like all these things. Then all of this, like talking, like everything. I was just, even when I was sleeping, I was thinking about some poker hands and stuff like that. I don't think I had to try hard. Now, if I said to someone, do like this, I think that would be like very crazy to do. But for me, it was just interesting and fun and I wanted to do it. And I think it's the same for someone who's great pianist that, I had a guitar and I took some lessons, I played it. But at some point I was like, yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to learn guitar to show off to girls and be like a cool guy. But I wasn't really so passionate about that I wanted to continue with it and really do it so many hours. But another guy who's probably a professional guitar player in a band, they also got a guitar, but they never put it away, right? Every free moment, even watching TV, they're looking at their guitar and playing and stuff like that. And that happened to me with poker, right? And it happened sort of naturally. I was, even in school, it was like 15-minute between breaks. I was like, hey, maybe I can play a few poker hands during this 15 minutes. I was sitting in the back in the class and the teacher wasn't too strict and I didn't want to put too much effort into that lesson there. I was like, oh, I'm going to play some poker on my phone during this lesson. I could have done anything, right? There was no pressure on me to do it. At that time, I could have I could have done anything literally there. I just wanted to play poker. And if someone's like Messi, who's like the best football player, ever since he was like 4 or 5 years old, that's all he did. And even now he's like 40, I think. And if there's ever like a video of him with his kids and so on, he's in his living room playing football or soccer with his 5 and 7-year-old kids and really enjoying this, right? So kind of obvious why he's so good at football. He just likes to do it and does it all the time. So for me, it's really this, to just try out different things. And then you find something that you don't want to stop doing. And then probably you'll get pretty good at it. I think it's tough to not get good at something that you're always thinking about, always want to do. So that's my answer for it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a good answer.
But it's a long answer, and good answers
No.
are shorter.
No, I think it's a good answer. I thought about what Seneca teaches. And he says that you cannot go against the nature of the person. So, and you have to look what your inclination is. So there are people who are more inclined to thinking and theoretical stuff, abstract stuff, abstract thought. And they're better at maybe becoming a good mathematician or a good writer or a good philosopher, And then there are other people who are more like, who like more active life, and they are better in serving the government, and going maybe into politics, So he says that if you try to go against nature, you won't get a good result, because nature won't allow you to go totally against her. So if the guy has no inclination, for example, if I try to teach the piano to somebody who doesn't like the instrument, who doesn't like classical music, and whatever I say, he thinks, well, he's an old idiot. I don't care about it, and I hate playing the instrument. I don't like listening to it, and I hate playing the instrument. So if that is really his opinion, then there's no point in me wasting my time, because it would go too much against his nature. But apart from that, I think that everything can be learned. So I think I want to say I'm a decent, but I'm not a bad poker player now, And if I can make it as a poker player, I'm sure most people can have the level I have, and even can be much better than I am. A lot of things you can learn, and you can also learn to appreciate stuff, but it must be real stuff, So, and interesting stuff. It's very hard to be passionate about something that has no meaning in itself, no nobility, nothing heroic, nothing great about it. It's very hard to be passionate about something like this. So, well, you need the right person and the right thing. And yes, it's hard to find, but once you see it, you have to be capable of finding people who can help you. That makes it much faster than if you have to figure everything out yourself. Anyways, I'm just talking over my head, but I found the idea from nature that can't be changed very interesting, which Seneca talks about it. And I think actually that a lot of people could learn the right stuff. I'm sure that a lot of people could be interested in the markets once they understand what it's about and why it's so important. The same thing is, poker is a great game, and I'm sure that most people could be interested in it if they had a good teacher and if they would put the effort into it. But that's easily said. For me, for example, I do so many stuff that I don't play enough, and that's an excuse. Actually, I still could just play more. So I don't do 100% what I should do, but I still try to improve every day. That's all I can say, and I hope that's good enough. If I can do more tomorrow in the future, then it would be even better.
I like the quote you said. I think it goes together with what I tried to say also before that. I think it complements that. And I agree. It's basically everyone can, yeah.
But the quote is very hard. So Seneca says you cannot go against nature. And that is something, it's like an obstacle. You won't go above it. And if you fail, well, then you fail, and we have to stop looking at you or trying to help you. You have to abandon an hopeless case, and most of the cases are hopeless. Yes, but I think if you can raise somebody and if you can give him the right environment, it's like a plant, it will grow on the thing that is around her, like the plants you see in the background of my picture, They take the building and start taking the shape of the building. And I think people do the same. They will also shape themselves on people they know. So, for example, I try to shape myself with your example, with your knowledge in poker. I try to shape myself accordingly and resemble you. So nature, yes, but I don't think it's 100%. Sometimes you cannot do anything. If somebody does like music at all, you won't make out of him a great pianist. Doesn't matter what you do. But if not, and he can start to learn and appreciate classical music, yeah, there's a good chance that if he puts the effort into it, well, I'm not sure he will, but if he puts the effort into it, there's a good chance he can make it as one of the best pianists of the world, But he has to put the effort in it. And it's a lot of effort. Now, the thing is, the other question is, should you do all that effort? Should you put all the pain and all the sacrifices into something like the piano to become one of the best pianists of the world? Well, I think yes, you should. As a Stoic man, I think yes, you should. Because if you don't do that, well, then you do something else. But the thing you do won't give you the same fulfillment. It just, you will survive. You will put some food on the table, but you won't get a sense of satisfaction out of it, a sense of having accomplished something, So yes, I think you should do the effort and try to be one of the best pianists. So what I tell for the piano, it can be for something different. Mathematics, literature, I don't know, raising chicks on a farm. It can be whatever you want, but try to be the best at it. I think it's important because if you don't try to do something meaningful, and chickens might not be meaningful enough. It's a bad example because chickens are just chickens, who cares about chickens? But anything else, yeah. Anything worth of a man, anything that is not slavery, yeah. I think it's worth the effort and it's worth all the sacrifices you put into it.
Well, right now I'm trying to be the best teacher I can be.
Yeah.
On the quote you said, I don't see it as strict. I actually see it as comforting because if you're not talented in something, and this quote says you can't do something that you go against your nature, that's more comforting than people just keep telling you, you should try harder, you're not trying hard enough, you're not good enough. Sometimes it's good if someone tells you, yeah, you have no talent in this avenue, and it's very unlikely, even if you try a lot, you won't get very far. I think there's comfort in this.
So you think that's good?
I just see that quote as comforting, that nature quote you said.
Okay. It makes me think about my life a lot, And so I was dyslexic. So it was very hard for me to read or to write anything. And my teacher, even though they were the most nice and kind teachers, they just realized that that it was extremely hard for me. I would never be able to write anything decent, and I could never do anything in that domain, And they were all totally wrong because by the exams I took, we have to do dissertation. It's a French exercise, and even the best dissertation get publicized in journals. So it's very prestigious. And I was the best kid to it, even with my dyslexia, and it was really, really hard for me, But I was still the best. So you cannot just listen to them, and you must be very careful. They only saw that it was much harder for me, and they thought because it was so hard for me that I was a failure and I would never make it. But they didn't realize what the substance is. The substance of being an author is not being good at grammar, or even making the most beautiful sentences. It's not that. That's important, but it's not that, The substance is your ideas, what you want to put in your books. That is important. It's the difference about how it looks and what is inside. In French, we call it the difference between la forme. I wanted to compare it to a singer with a bad voice, but it's not exactly the same. A singer with a bad voice. It's like if you say somebody, he has a bad voice, he will never be a singer. Okay? Now, that is correct up to a certain extent, but he could be a great composer. He could maybe write really interesting lyrics and compose great songs, even if he doesn't sing them himself, there are other people who can sing his songs for him. So just saying you will never make it because you're a little different than somebody else, you might be totally wrong with that. I would have never made it into university if I didn't have the best result possible in my dissertation. You know, that's the thing that opened me the doors to go to university. And they told me, all my teachers, that I was a hopeless case, that I would never make it. And I made it with the thing they said I would never make it. You know, I didn't make it with mathematics or something else. I made it with the thing they said I would never make it. So you must be very careful with people who think that nature is totally, because my nature was, for me, it was hard since I was dyslexic a lot. Now I'm less. But when I was little, I was a lot dyslexic. So do you get what I mean? Yes, nature, you cannot go against nature. I agree with that. But also, you must understand that a human spirit is something very powerful. And if somebody really wants to do something, he will find a way to do it.
I think you should be thankful for these teachers, and I think they did the correct thing. So I don't think a teacher has to be right. Teacher's goal is to get to the student, right? Get to them. And sometimes the best way you get to someone, you say they can never do it. Sometimes that's the most motivating thing you can say, even if it's incorrect. But if that fuels a passion in that person and they're like, I'm going to prove to them that I can do it, then the teacher did its job, right? It's not what teacher says, it's what happens in the student. And if you turned out well and you learned to write and got over your problem, then I think probably part of it was that if they had been a different way, maybe it wouldn't have fueled the fire like it did in you.
Yeah, what fueled the fire was not just their opinion. I thought their opinion, I didn't know if it's right or wrong at that time. But their opinion was not that what had that impact. Yeah, it was shameful to be in that situation because for everybody else, they didn't have those difficulties. But what saved me was my love for great authors like Voltaire, Montesquieu, Balzac, all those great, huge French authors that I admire and did read. You know, that love made me want to be like them and capable of one day writing my own books and publishing them, you know? It just, for me, it was interesting intellectually, and the love of it made me go over the obstacles. But it was very hard. It was very hard, especially for somebody like me. So it's just the admiration that I had and the love for the people that I did study. And that's something they couldn't take from me. Even if they said, you'll never make it, you're a failure, they couldn't they couldn't extinguish my love for literature. That's what saved me. It's just my personal story. Thank you for being so patient and listening to all.
I want to share something here as well for you. So I don't know you so well, but I've thought this many times, and I guess I'll start with sharing this, not that button. What button? I think this button. Right? This also goes together with this topic, this quote, right, from Seneca himself. So I've been thinking about you, and you know, I think you would be a good teacher who could do something similar like I do. I think you could be a good teacher for trading, or be a good teacher for philosophy and specialism, right? So have you ever, and I mean this in a way of like based on our discussion as well. Like I think you have a natural inclination for it, right? I've had many students, I think like 200 or so, and there's very few who really, how to say, act like a teacher in a way. I don't know how to exactly word it, but you also, in any moment you can, you try to explain as clearly and well all these things you think are important for me also to understand or think about and these things. So I think you have a lot of natural like willingness and inclination and in your nature, I could say, to do a teaching. That's at least how it seems to me. So have you ever, so for me, how I started, I just started in 30 minutes. I did this profile and I thought, let it be there. If nothing ever comes of it, it's fine. But it would be fun to if I tried it out and see how it goes. And at first, I think I was much worse in this as well. So certainly I've improved, I think, in communicating and all of this. But so I just try to say that It doesn't have to be like a big thing, right? And I do know you are in a way a teacher right now through your YouTube challenge, right? YouTube channel, because that's also teaching the wider audience, right? But have you thought about something like this? I think it's like in your nature to teach, basically.
Thank you for all the compliments. You're a kind man. Yeah, like you, I enjoy actually teaching when I have a student who is interested. But it just the things I want to teach, like stoicism, trading. What do I teach? Yeah, mostly that. I don't know too many people who are interested in it. And also the thing is, yeah, maybe one day a door opens and I will take some time to teach more. I would enjoy it. I also would like to have kids, and be able to teach them stuff. But until now, fortune has not given me that privilege of doing this.
I think you do well in it. Do you currently have a profile somewhere where you're like, hey, I'm here. If you want, I can teach you trading, or hey, I'm here. If you want, I can teach you more about stoicism. Because that's how you found me, right? If I didn't have that profile, you would have never known there's a guy in Estonia wanting to teach poker. So do you have a place somewhere where people could find you and contact you for teaching?
No, I don't. But, it's not because I don't do it now that I will never do it. So I'll think about it. And maybe one day I'll find something. But, the thing is, Seneca also teaches that you have to do what fortune allows you to do. So if you are called to be a Roman senator, well, then you will have the life of a Roman senator, which is a very wealthy and influential life. They had a lot of slaves and a lot of political power, being a Roman senator. But if you cannot do that, well, maybe you can work as a lawyer and help people out with legal affairs. And if you cannot do that because your situation won't allow it or the state will not allow it, well, then maybe you can help your friends in private affairs and private matters. Be a good friend, cultivate have good relationship with your neighbors and so on. And if you cannot do that, well, maybe you can just help a small family, your wife, your kids, maybe one or two slaves, and be a good citizen. Yeah, a good citizen. That's the idea. And if you cannot do that, well, then you have to take care of yourself. If you live in a deserted island, well, then you have to take care of yourself, and you have to forget all the rest. So my life hasn't allowed me to be a teacher and to have kids until now. But maybe one day, I'm not dead, so who knows? And the thing is, also, I think I'll progress faster without actually teaching. And I'm scared that people would just slow me down.
What's the Seneca quote I sent to you or showed you on the screen? Do you remember?
Yeah, of course. I even know the where he said it, the context of when he said it. He says that by teaching we learn, something like this. I know that, and that's why I have a couple of private clients, I advise as a financial advisor, and I like talking with them and explaining them stuff. But I only have a very few, and they're all people that I know and who know me. Not the kind of people you talk about where you have a profile and they find you. It is people that I met and we talked about it. And I said, look, I could be your financial advisor if you want. We agree on the conditions and I'll do the work. And we meet and we talk over your financial situation. And we try to make sure that the stuff that happened to Jackass, who lost 44 millions in 4 or 5 years, well, that won't happen to you. And you'll thrive. You'll make a lot of money. A lot of people get it and and the results normally are very good, especially if I can keep them for a long enough period so they can see those results. But I really get the idea and it's very kind. But for me, the most important is to work on myself. For me, it's important to keep right now proofreading my books and I learned how to proofread my books. And last week, I even realized how I can make the process faster. There's a trick with ChatGPT which allows me to go through the steps a little faster. And that trick, it took me a long time to realize that it was possible. And finally, I got it. So now proofreading is a little faster and it makes it much easier. It's still a lot of work, but it's much easier than before. And those small details, I'm not sure that I will learn them if I have too much time with clients. It's good if most of my time I concentrate on myself, because that will allow me to progress the fastest. Everything else I'm scared that it will hold me back. I'm trying something athletic. I try to be a profitable trader and make money, the most amount of money possible. And I know that we are talking about millions. It could be 1 million, 10 millions, 100 millions, and so on, So I know that all that is possible. And when you try something like this, it takes a lot of attention. I'm not sure that I could have a job from 9 to 5, and still do all the stuff I want to do.
That is again black and white thinking. I wasn't saying that now you're gonna teach 40 hours every week, right? So from my own, I started, I think, just giving at first, I think I gave maybe 1-2 lessons a week, right? That's very small thing. The second ever order I got from Fiverr, so the second ever guy was from Spain, and he introduced me to Hand to Note, the program you're using right now. And there's been so many instances like that. So I know from my first-hand experience what it means, how I interpret Seneca's quote that you learn while we teach, because I guess you could say every person, not obviously every person, but it's very, very often that even in surprising ways, everyone knows something I don't know in a way. And there's a common topic, whether it's trading, philosophy, or poker. And, even with some discussions with hands, sometimes you say something and I didn't notice that, right? So these types of things. So yeah, I don't know where I would be it's tough to go back in time. But there was way more things about poker that I didn't understand that time, and I do now. So yeah, just wanted to mention this, that with trading, it could be the same, right? That you give a lesson to someone and someone shows you something which you haven't seen somewhere before, and boom, that's so that's what I mean by you learn, in a way, if I want to get better at poker, I also have to review hands and think about poker hands. Well, I'm doing that during the lesson, right? So it's basically whether I'm looking at my hands, other people's hands. I mean, it's the same stuff basically. So.
No, I fully understand what you mean, and I agree. And it's not a bad idea. It's just that
I'm not saying anything, right?
It's not a bad idea. And yes, I'm not opposed to having a couple more clients or to teach a little more. But it's just
you're a busy man.
Yeah, it's not just that I'm busy man. Anyways, Norman, thanks a lot for the comment. I'll keep it in mind, and if one day I'll find the time or I see an opportunity, I will try to make something out of it. Anyways, we already spent 1 hour and 30 minutes talking. Now, do we still have a couple of minutes to look at some hands?
Okay, let's do it.
Or do you want to show me something different today?
No, I think it's good. I think you might have some hands from that heads up mat or all these things, right? So it would be, because if we last time talked about this limping in heads up, I would be very happy to review some spots where you limped heads up, right? So basically to review what you learned.
Yeah, so then we look at my heads up games and we go through the last heads up games I played. Do you want to do that instead of looking at the marked hands? It's okay with me. It's okay with me, but I didn't play too much heads up games since last time, so there won't be too much hand.
Next week, mark more heads up hands. But right now, let's review the hands you have marked.
Okay.
I think it's very important to look at marked hands. I think it's like basically if you mark it, it's like you had a question about that hand. So it's very crucial, these hands. And yes, let's see what happens here. No bubble pressure or very little right now. We're in 6th place. And I did see the result of this hand, but I didn't see the next ones, right? So someone raises, and you went all in. I think this is, there's some chance he will fold. And even if he doesn't, you have ace queen. And if you go out, I mean, we're way in 6th place, right? So, I mean, player one's also close, but other players have like 20 big blinds and more. So actually, it's kind of nice, right? If we kick player one out, then we also have 20 big blinds and we're in the mix with the other ones. So yeah, if there was 4 players left or stuff like that. But no, I think ace queen's strong enough. I like this. What did he end up having? Yeah, he had king 6. You know, this time he called. Another time he might fold it. But you got it in with a 60% favorite. You know, I think it's pretty good, right? I mean, you were 6th place. You got all in, chance to double as a 60% favorite. And you had some chance it fold. I mean, king 6, I think he could go either way, right? So I'm happy with this hand. What's your question or comment on this?
Yeah, it's just that he already showed quite some strength because he only has 10 big blinds left and he went for 2. So I was not sure that I should have taken the risk. But I thought that, as you said, for the reason you just pointed out, that it was worth it. And if we look at my probabilities, that's the case. So I have no special question. I just wanted to go through it and see if I didn't make a mistake. Thank you.
See the next hand. Okay, now we are on the bubble, a big stack in the big blind. And this is, you know, this is difficult. I'd actually put this into this holder manager tool because I don't know, it's a very tricky spot, right? I mean, one way we have 5s, 11 something big blinds. Why not go all in? On the other guys also have 10 and 11, and you're all going all in against the one guy who can call all ins, player 6. So, I mean, it's very tricky. I mean, so let's see what the machine thinks of it. But what options do we have with this handball? You could have min raised to 2 big blinds. You could have tried to limp in. Yeah, there was some other options here. So, in a moment, see if it starts to load. Machine doesn't load right now. Maybe it's machine wants me to tell what I would do without the machine. So what would I do here? Would have I gone all in? I mean, you have an advantage in this because you know something about player 6. You played the whole tournament with him. Do you remember anything about player 6?
Now, no. Maybe when I was playing, yes, but now, no.
Is it possible he was that loose player?
No.
So now machine worked and it would shove a lot here because big blind should be quite tight. So if I copy this in the chat here, yeah, actually I would have known that the machine shoves any pair there. But from a human standpoint, could we do something else? So if you look in the Google Meet text, any pair, and then all the other like even 8-7 suited and stuff like that. So, I mean, machine really is taking quite a lot of risk because if you look at what big blind should do, even though he has 25 big blinds, he should fold 4 times out of 5. So that's why the machine is so courageous, that the machine thinks big blind will fold ace-6, that big blind will fold ace-5, that it will fold ace-2 offsuit, that it will fold king 9 suited. I think in this spot, the big blind will likely call more than he should, right? I think your opponent will call ace-5 off in this spot. Do you agree or don't agree? He shouldn't, but I think he would. I think he shouldn't call king 9 suited, but I think he will. That's my read on how people play. So because I think big blind will call a little bit more often, I think we want to be a little bit more prudent, but still fives is too strong to not go. So it looks like theory agrees with you that you made the correct play here and you could shove any pair, any ace, and a bunch of other hands as well.
Great.
But it doesn't, in some ways, it doesn't feel right to me. And I guess I'll explain why. I feel like you could almost fold to top 3 here. I don't know this player 4 and player 8, but I feel like in the next 3 hands, one of them will go up. And if we fold the next 3 hands, we will still have 10 big blinds. So this is my feeling about this, that people are going to gamble a lot. And I just feel like top 3 is sort of guaranteed. So I think I would have gone all in as my first instinct. But now if I'm thinking long about it, I'm really in a $1 tournament. Do I really want to just gamble with the big blind where I know he's going to call quite often? I think I'll get a better hand. I think I'll get a better spot. We have so many big blinds. We can see so many more hands. If I'm really in like survival first mode, I think I could see myself limping in this hand. I'm playing like super cautious, super passive. And if the other players are smart, then that would be a mistake. But I'm thinking I will get to top 3, maybe even top 2 without playing one more hand. Because I think the other people will do a lot of gamble. Do you think that's realistic or no?
Well, I think it's not impossible, but just as you said, pocket 5 is too good because you can even do it with pocket 2s. So pocket 5 is even stronger. So it is just hard to fold pocket 5s.
I'm not saying fold, right? I'm saying limping in.
Yeah, limping in is okay. But the thing is, I pointed this out because I'm 4th. So 4th position. And I'm close to I'm on the bubble and it's easy and it should be possible for me to enter to be at least 3rd if I don't take any risks. So that's why I wanted to know if you agree. And Math agree with me that I should make my all in. But you say that if you are in survival mode and you want to be very cautious, well, then limping is better.
Yes. But I think I would have also shoved here. But now that I think like so long about this, I think we have like better chances getting top 3 if we don't take these big gambles. Actually, I wanted to ask you this previously, so it's good that this hand came up. I wanted to ask you this. Your heads up against the big fish. Where do you have a better chance of beating him? In a 1 all-in spot, even if you're a 60 or 70% favorite, in a 1 all-in spot, or if you play 10 flops with him and 10 turns and 10 rivers, which is more likely that you will come out on top if you play 10 hands post-flop against the big fish, or you're in 1 pot for an all-in?
Well, since I know much more about the game than he does, and I make much better decision than he does, the more hands I play, it should be in my favor. If I play only 1 hand with him, then he can get lucky and win, and I might be out. But if I play a lot of hands with him, then it's really hard for him to get lucky because my skill will over time.
Exactly my point. So that's why I'm hesitant with the 5 shove here. Yes, it's fine mathematically, but it's still, is it really necessary? And I'm not sure it's really necessary. I think with these 10.8 big blinds and the other 2, player 4 also has 10.8, player 8, 11.2. I think it's more likely that just being in more hands than in this 1 all-in, that you'll get some chances. That's my thought on this.
Okay, let's see what happened. I think he folded. Yeah, he did. Okay, next.
Okay, this is not ace queen anymore, but we still have 6 players. And now we're shoving less side as well, right? We're shoving 8 here versus his open. And also we have to be very cautious about player 7 because he's on a very short stack. And even if you go all in, player 7 is quite unlikely to fold. So this is way worse than the ace queen spot. And actually our stack's not too bad here, right? Player 4 is number 1. Player 6 is player 8 is number 2. Player 6 is number 3, but you're not too far off from player 6. In the ace queen hand, everybody in top 3 had more than 20 bigs. Here, 3rd place only has 11 point something. So actually, and 2 players have very short stacks. So I would fold here. I would respect player 8 and I would wait. That's my opinion on this. Okay, let's see if, and everyone folds. I mean, this is the dream, right? So you can be very happy with this result. So yes, you took a risk here, but when they all fold, then that's a ideal result, I would say.
Yeah, but I was hesitating a lot. And maybe I only called because of how they played. And player 8, I think he was the kind of guy who puts two big blinds on the table, but then when somebody goes all in, he folds. I think I saw him doing that a couple of times. So I thought there's a good chance that he'll fold.
The discussion we had at the start of the lesson, you're showing this in this hand, right? That you're noticing something, and then you make an adjustment. You're not going from black to white and going all in everything, but you are now a little more comfortable going all in against player 8 because of the read. So you're basically bullying and exploiting player 8 here, right? So very nice.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, straight on the bubble, but we are the shorter stack here. So I could put it to machine, but I'm pretty sure the machine says, well, I'll still put it, but I think it's a standard all-in, right? You have your pre-flop ranges as well for this. So yeah, I don't think there's too much to look into this, but let's see what the weakest hand is that machine would go here. But I think this is, I don't think there's, now we're in 4th place. I think there's less space to just fold and wait that we get to top 3. So I think this is fine. And yeah, I think you're going to shove the correct range here. So I'm going to copy. And I think you'll probably shove very similar to what I copied, basically the opening range from it, right? So you see king 10 better, king 9 suited better, ace 7 off better, ace 5 off, queen 9 suited, queen jack off, 10-9 suited. I think you're gonna play this correctly, this spot. What is...
I don't understand. There's ace 7 off plus. So ace 7, ace 8, ace 9 offsuit will all play. But then there's also ace 5 off. Why is there again an ace 5 now?
Well, there's just ace 6 off missing. That's how you should read it. And the reason is because ace 5 is a little bit nicer than ace 6.
How come ace 5 is nicer than ace 6?
Because it can make a straight if the board comes 2, 3, 4. So it already has 2 cards to a straight.
Yeah, of course. I understand. Thank you. I'm just going through them. And here again, we have queen, jack, and then jack 9 suited. Well, it's different. It's queen, jack, and queen. Yeah. Why is there only queen, jack offsuit, no plus after queen, jack offsuit?
Plus after it.
Why not?
Because that would be... What would be the next hand then?
Queen, jack offsuit. So there are a lot of hands.
Like what?
Queen, king.
Okay.
Offsuit, but queen, king offsuit is already probably taken.
Yes.
It's already on the king 10. Okay, so there's no better one. Yeah,
so
I understand.
You have to read it from your strongest card starting, right? So your strongest card is king, and it's king 10 off and plus. So that's where king jack and king queen are also in there.
Okay, it all makes perfect sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I think you played this well. And in this hand, I don't think you have another option. I don't think you should raise or anything else. I think this is fine. Unfortunately, we do get called, but we had decent chances, 42.43%. And yeah, him calling ace 4, people are quite loose, right? I think he shouldn't have gambled there, but he did. So I don't really like his call there.
Yeah, he should have folded.
Yeah. All right. Now this could be interesting, right? Very early on. So pretty looking hand. Definitely strong enough to limp in here. Raising, I don't think everyone will fold. That's why I wouldn't raise. I mean, I know the pot's tempting, but you would have to raise something like 7, 8 big blinds. And I don't think everyone would fold. And then you would be in a huge pot with just 6, 5. So I would limp in here and negotiate the flop. I would never fold this. Yeah, I like this. Okay, now we have something, but we also have a lot of opponents. And how many cards do they have all combined?
1, 2, 3, 4, 8 cards.
No.
With me, 10.
No, not with you. Without you. How many are there?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, there are 5. Okay. So 10. With me, 12. Yeah.
10 cards. There's 52 cards in an undealt deck. Now, how many cards do you see right now that you know the value of?
Cards.
Actually more.
And my 2 cards.
So total?
It's 5 cards.
So if there was 52 cards in a deck, then how many unknown cards are there for you?
Well, I don't know what the 5 players that I'm facing have. So they are unknown cards. I only know 5 cards.
Right. So what's 52 minus 5?
It's 47.
47, exactly. So there's 47 options what their cards could be, but they have 10 of those 47s. So essentially, they have more than 1/5 of the deck in their hand, right? Basically, every 5th card from the deck, one of these guys has. So it's looking quite likely someone could also have an 8, could have a 9, could have a higher straight draw, could have a higher flush. So even though your hand's nice here, I don't think you should do much other than check on this flop and go from there. So the point of what I was saying here is to explain how if you had one opponent, then he would have less than 5% of the cards from the deck. He would just have 2 cards out of 47. So that's 4.2%. But with 5 opponents, they have more than 21% of cards. So we have to be way, way more cautious.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
All right. We do
You know,
here.
Poker is great because you learn a lot about probabilities, which doesn't mean a lot for most people. But you also learn a lot about logic because everything you say is logical. It's just a simple fact. But it's very important to realize that fact and play accordingly. And just as things we do on the poker table, I think in life we should do the same. We should think logically and take a logical decision with our life and what we do. So I think that's a great lesson, and that's something very important for us, because for us reason is hard. The ancient philosophers in antiquity thought that God had perfect reason, but we do not. And for us, we have to work a lot on our reason to make it perfect.
Yeah, I agree. And, it's sometimes we know the right thing or the logical thing, but it's still too tough to do it for one or the other reason, right? So emotions also, yeah.
Yeah, but if you keep analyzing it, and if you keep putting yourself in the same position over and over, you want to make the best decision possible, you will end up doing it. So it is possible.
Yes, I like it. I agree. So we get 1 bet for half pot, 1 caller. You see the odds are 4-1. We need to win it 1 in 5 times. And, I think it's a begrudging call. It's a call where, all right, but I'm not sure what I want to see, right? If a 7 comes, what am I worried about?
Probably a straight.
What does a 7 give us?
6, 7, 8, 9. It gives us a straight.
So why am I worried about a 7?
Because if he has a 10, he might make a straight, but a better straight than we have.
What has to be the other card next to the 10?
Probably a 6.
There's another option. What you said is correct.
Or jack.
Perfect. Your answer is perfect. You've gotten much better with understanding how straights works in poker. So that's very good. So yes, you see a 7 is a nice card for us, but I would still be cautious and don't want to go all in, even on a 7. A heart makes us a flush, but I'm still going to be worried someone could have king 7, queen 4 suited, ace 2 suited. There's so many better flushes. So I do feel like we have to call. We have enough outs, but all these outs I'm gonna be still cautious about.
So we have 9 outs for the flush, and how much do we have for the 7? Maybe 4? I don't know.
It's a flush.
Oh yeah. So only 3. Okay.
9, yes. So that's why we call.
So 12, and 12 times 4 is 48.
Yes. Almost.
And 4-1 is, I don't know how much. 4-1, yeah, 20%, of course.
So the number from last list.
Yeah, 41. So it's 1 out of 5.
1 out of
That's
5.
that's why it's 20%. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Norman.
I like the progress in how quickly you grasp this. Good. So, okay, we call and let's see the turn. Yeah, it's not our card essentially. So our 48% has now dwindled down to what?
Half.
Which is what?
24.
It is 24. So let's see what happens. Yeah. And this is, to me, well, you answer. Do an interpretation of Norman. What will Norman say?
I think you will say that I have to fold.
Yes, you're right. There you go. Exactly. That's what I will say. You have to. You see, the odds were, yeah. And you did it right. You did the correct play there. So most likely he could already have a straight, right? He could already have Jack 10. So because.
Yeah, I had only 24%. And here it's 1.8 to 1. So what does that mean? I have to make it 1 out of 2.8. Is that correct?
Yes, 1 over 2.8. Exactly right.
Okay. Now how much is 1 out of 2.8?
So here's what
It's like 33%. So I have 24 and that is probably around 30%. So I don't have enough outs to call anyways.
Yeah, so I would do a simplification, right? So 1 out of 2.8 is very similar to 1 out of 3. And it's actually 35.7%. I did it with a calculator here. But you're going to be quite close if you do it 1 out of 3, 33%, right? So anyhow, our 6-5 doesn't have that. And you know what's the worst case scenario here? Someone has a hand like Queen 8 or 9-8. What's our chances then?
0, because in that case they have a full house. And I want to win with a flush.
Actually, you're incorrect because we would have 2%. We would have one magical card in the deck that would make us a hand that beats a full house.
What is that?
That is the 7 of hearts that would put on the table simultaneous straight and a flush, also known as a straight flush, which is stronger than a full house or a 4 of a kind. You could even beat 4 8s if you hit the 7 of hearts, because you would have 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, all straight and all the same suit as well.
Yeah, so and you called it a straight flush. Is it also called a royal flush?
Royal flush is an exception of straight flushes where the straight has to be from ace to 10. That's a royal flush.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think we can do one more hand and then call it a day for this time. Another early tournament hand with I like that you mark these ones. So yeah, maybe it's good if you now mark a bit more early hands and then heads up hands. That would be nice. Yes, the other player makes a very big raise here. And I'll ask you this a different way. Imagine everyone had 20 big blinds. What would his raise mean if he only had 20 big blinds? What would it mean then? What % of his stack would he raise if he had 20 big blinds?
He would raise 100%.
He would raise 100%. Now, you've been in many spots where people have 20 big blinds. If someone goes all in 20 big blinds, what do you do with ace-8 suited for 20 big blinds?
I fold.
You fold, exactly. And in this case, it's a little
bit. Well, if there are a lot of players on the table, yes. But ace-8 suited, if I'm heads up, I wouldn't fold.
Okay, but that's heads up, right? So heads up is a special game mode. But
yeah, okay.
But basically, why I'm saying this is there's no reason for you to take this big gamble. He could easily have something better than ace-8. And even if he doesn't, then he's bluffing. Well, he's taking a huge risk because he has to get player 6 to fold, player 7, player 8, you, and the player 3 who already limped. And if one of you 5 players has something that they want to gamble with, then player 5's tournament is over. So I try to remind in spots like this, the pressure to catch player 5 isn't only on you. Even if player 5 is the biggest, craziest bluffer in the world, it's not only your job to catch him, it's everyone else's job as well. And soon enough, someone will have pocket jacks and be like, okay, I'm going to gamble with you, player 5. And then most likely he will go out. So I think you can just fold this without, like you did basically, right? So all the hands you showed, actually, you did quite good decisions.
Yeah, and I think he had pocket kings, for example, because that would make sense.
Could you play this hand until the end? Oh, everyone folded, yeah. So, all right.
Okay, great, Norman. We had a very interesting and long session today. I'm very grateful for that. So thanks a lot. Any final thoughts? Can we call it? It was very interesting. And yes, I think I did quite well. So I'm quite happy with my performance over the last week. I hope it will be the same in the future. Feel confident that I will make it. Now I'm 15 USD above break even. So then I would make it to 30 and one day to 60. And then I could be very comfortable going to level 2 if that happens.
Yeah, so my comment is I'm happy with you. I'm happy that you're clearly better now with noticing straights. I'm happy that you practice this heads up thing that we talked last lesson. And yeah, like the hands that you played, and we had an interesting discussion as well. So I just hope you'll mark some heads up and early level hands for next week. So we see some heads up decisions that you do and we can review them. But in general, I think you're playing quite well right now. I think I like what I'm seeing.
One final question, because I'm seeing your background and I noticed that it's not the same as usual. Are you at a friend's house or did you move into a new apartment?
No, I'm actually, I haven't moved yet, although I am in a rental place. So I am planning to buy my own home basically at some place, but I'm still in the process of all of that basically. But right now I'm at my sister's, and yeah, so this is my sister's place basically.
Okay, great. How is the dog doing?
The dog looks like wants to eat dinner and wants to go for a walk. And I'm going to do that with her now. So,
okay, that sounds great. I don't know how to say it in English, but say hello to your sister for me.
She's currently I won't see her for some time because she's in Madeira. Madeira, that's a Portuguese island in Atlantic Ocean near Africa.
Some holidays.
Yes, exactly. And I was so kind.
So you are taking care of the dog. Now I understand. Okay. Great, Norman.
Yeah, I was kind enough to do it. So,
are you the only one who's taking care of the dog, or is there somebody else also?
No, they could also, there's even businesses who take care of dogs.
Yeah, I know. But now will you do it 100% until she comes back?
Oh, yes, but it's not much work, right? So it's...
Yeah. For how long will it be? 1 or 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think something like 2 weeks total, I think, yeah.
Okay, great. I'm sorry for asking all those questions, but I'm just curious. Anyways, Norman, thanks a lot. It was great talking to you. I really enjoyed it. It was really, really great. And there's another word for it, but I'm limited in my knowledge of the English language.